Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. We've got plenty to talk about today. We're going to continue our summer review series today, breaking down the Detroit Pistons and the Memphis Grizzlies, the moves that they made, plus a little bit of news to get into and a little bit of telling the future. Keith, we need to look into the crystal ball and take a look at cap space coming up, not this summer, but next summer.
Yeah, this summer is basically done. We're in the books as far as our worlds are concerned with both the NBA and our real world life. Kids are back in school now,
That's right.
as we're already moving, and we're with that, and then we've got the NBA is done-ish. I guess we're still waiting on the trades. Everybody knows, and we'll see if they ever happen. But for now, yeah, we've got a little bit of news that has trickled in, including a signing that we'll talk about in a little bit. Yeah, and then we'll start talking about next off season already, because it's I know there's a whole season in between, but this is how it works. You start preparing already for next year. So we'll get into all that, as well as the Pistons and Grizzlies. I'm excited.
All right, well, let's jump through a few news topics, and then let's look ahead to future cap space, and then we'll talk Pistons and Grizzlies. Why don't we'll order things that way here, and let's just dive right into it. So Derrick Jones Jr. Signs with the Mavs, a 1-year deal, a little bit more help on the wing. What does this really mean for the Mavs' big picture? Is this a sign of any other moves that are coming, or do we just take this for what it is?
Yeah, I think this is probably more of a just kind of filling out the roster type of move. Jones Jr. is one of those guys who I know I've always really kind of liked him. I get super excited about those really athletic guys, because I just start dreaming like, well, if they can just add a shot, or they can handle the ball a little better, or whatever. And then some of them it happens and some of them it doesn't. Jones Jr. has kind of been one of the ones where it's never kind of clicked for him, especially since leaving Miami. He kind of hasn't been the same guy, that's a testament, I guess, to the Heat and everything that they've been. So we'll see. My guess is just throw him in the mix now with a whole bunch of forwards. Dallas still, we know they'd like to move JaVale McGee. I think they'd like to trade Tim Hardaway Jr. Wouldn't be surprised if that becomes a package deal to bring in a higher salaried player and those kind of things. But it's going to be hard for Jones to crack that front court rotation. You've got Grant Williams there. You've got Maxi Kleba. Then you've got the centers and Dwight Powell. You've got Derek Lively,
Rashawn Holmes now too.
Rashawn Holmes, yep. They're going to try to get back on track. So I don't know if there's a path to playing time for Jones, but if there is, run the floor, play defense, be active around the rim. Luka, Kyrie, they'll find him, and maybe that's how he gets on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, he's a depth piece, not a bad one at that. And again, this is the kind of move that's going to go down right now. Not that there's a lot out there on the free agent market anyway, but like we've been saying, everybody's kind of waiting to see what happens with Damian Lillard, with James Harden. So the kind of deals that are going to get done right now, they're not exactly going to be earth-shattering, because everybody's kind of in pause mode, with the exception of a couple little things here and there are gonna trickle through. That's what's happening here. But not a bad. It's a 1-year deal, yeah. So it can't necessarily be bad just by nature. It can't be a bad deal here for Dallas, and worth a shot just to add a little bit more depth. Like you said, though, given who they've added, especially when you put Grant Williams into the mix, the path to playing time is not very clear in Dallas.
Yeah, and to your point, 1-year deal, it doesn't work out. You just move on and go in a different direction. I just looked it up because I was curious. He's only 26, so Derrick Jones still fairly young. Hasn't even really hit those kind of prime years. Yeah, I know.
I would have guessed he was late 20s.
I would have guessed late 20s, maybe even 30. But 26. But came in the league as a 19-year-old. Back in 2016. So only 26. That doesn't he'll turn 27 in the middle of February. So
wow,
maybe there's still some untapped potential there. And big thing is, if he could shoot it better, he wouldn't be signing in the beginning part of August for the minimum. That's just the reality. He just doesn't shoot it well enough.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Keith, well, since you mentioned that, we're surprised that Derrick Jones Jr. is in his mid-20s. My fun fact that has surprised everybody is no longer true. Happy birthday, Andre Drummond. Today, he is now 30. I would tell you, Andre Drummond is, for a while, I was saying Andre Drummond is still not 30 years old, and nobody believed me. Today, he is 30.
Yeah, that one is nuts. That feels like no way that could be true because it feels like he's been in it feels like he's been in the league for like 15
right?
years already. So that we know wouldn't be possible. But yeah, that's crazy. I saw I can't remember if it was the NBA or the Bulls or the NBPA. They all do kind of those birthday tweets.
Yeah.
And I saw one of them earlier today where a bunch of people were responding like, wait, is this a typo? Like this
Is
has
this
to
a
be
joke?
wrong. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Kristaps Porzingis. Is Kristaps Porzingis hurt? We've got conflicting stories here. We've got some reports saying he's hurt, so maybe it was something with a foot or something like that. We don't know the severity. And then a report out of Latvia says no, he's not hurt. I think the more pressing question is Kristaps Porzingis ever truly 100% healthy?
That may be the question. And that's something the Celtics don't want to be asking, right? Like,
sure.
Especially after last year's experience with Danilo Gallinari getting injured over the summer and then missing the entire year. Porzingis, obviously, a far bigger deal because he's expected to start, be a huge part of things. And they gave him a 2-year, $60 million extension. So you don't really want to start that with him being hurt. But I don't know. This is going to be one of those ones where we're going to have to wait here probably another week or so until rosters finalized for the World Cup before I think people will really feel okay about, all right, I guess he is okay. The report that came out, it was by a European-based reporter who said Porzingis has a foot injury, and the Celtics and the Latvian Basketball Association were like working on how do we manage this? Like, should he play? Should he not play in the World Cup at the end of the month? What does that look like? Then Latvia came out. They issued, I guess, a statement at practice the other day, which was like, there's nothing going on. And then they actually put out like an official statement that was like, this is false. There's, nothing happening here. He's still, moving forward, as are we with preparations for the World Cup. So there wasn't a full, no, there's no injury in there. That sentence did not exist, but they did deny hey, those reports are false. So I guess we'll find out when we see if he's actually on the roster and then does he actually play or not.
That's interesting because if you're Latvia, you don't want reports getting, because you don't want to get that phone call from Boston saying no, shut him down. We don't want to play. So it behooves you to say, oh no, he's fine. Not saying that's wrong. Hopefully he is totally fine.
Yeah.
But that's just, there's some motive there to say, oh no, he's totally good, right? And we'll see.
And when it's a player of this stature, the teams generally have someone kind of around, maybe not necessarily right there every single day.
Not
but
like you and Shams in Vegas.
Yeah. Pop over there and see somebody, right? But it's like, so they've got somebody kind of around to hang out with and go see and go see those guys. So that's where, we'll see, kind of how that all kind of comes together with that. But it's, that's my guess is the Celtics are, they're at least well aware of whatever is going on. And I would think if there's any kind of issue, they would shut it down and say, nope, we're pulling him, like he can't play. And I know people think the NBA teams don't have the right to do that. They, in like 99% of cases, that they do, because generally a player's contract prohibits playing any kind of outside basketball without team permission. So that's one of the things that gets prohibited, along with that's like falls under the clauses of you can't ride a motorcycle, you can't go I don't know, rock climbing. I know was a big one for a while there.
Snowboarding.
It was very famous for Steve Nash had to have in there that he could play soccer. Like he always had that, like as a excluded from there. It's weird to say it this way, but like an excluded, prohibited activity because he wanted to be able to play soccer and do all the stuff that he did there. So my guess is, if there's any hint of, hey, he might really be hurt, Boston would shut this down.
How does that work? This is kind of an aside here, but how does that work for like open run scrimmages and things like that we see guys participate in all summer?
Yeah, there's usually kind of like a carte blanche, like, hey, it's okay, we're all right, but if there is any word, like we can kind of we'll either shut it down, or if you get hurt in one of those things, there is always the potential like it could void a contract. We know Montrezl Harrell, for example, got hurt, tore an ACL in a offseason workout. it's not going to void. They're not going to void his contract. And I don't know specifically if his has that language or not, but if it does, it's rare that a team would say, "Hey, we're going to void the deal." It would have to be, "Hey, you're doing one of the kind of more crazy extreme type
Right.
sport things," and and generally that's also like we also would like out of this deal anyway. So let's try to go, and that'd be something that then it would get all tied up and fought, and probably end up in arbitration and everything else because it's not these things are in there, but they're not super cut and dry and very clear. So but it's very rare that any of that comes up.
All right, the Suns retiring Amari Stoudemire and Sean Marion's jerseys. They're going to be in the Ring of Honor there in Phoenix. It's certainly worthy of retirement. Both these players were a big part of the 7 seconds or less Suns and sort of changing the way that the game of basketball is played. I remember the summer, and I can't remember the exact year, but I remember the summer when everybody was talking about like, are the Suns really going to play fast? And people were scoffing at the idea that Sean Marion was going to slide down to power forward from small forward, and Stoudemire was going to slide down to center, and the Suns were going to try to play fast and shoot a lot. And people were saying, oh, it's not going to work and everything. And now here we are. Now, by comparison to today's NBA, the Suns actually played kind of slow and didn't shoot enough threes compared to how far teams have taken it at this point. But nonetheless, worthy retirements here, jersey retirements for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, big time. I mean, these guys are, really, they were massive parts of some extremely successful Suns teams. And I remember, so a couple quick things on this. I remember this is because the years we're talking about here. Do you know the first kind of year, 7 seconds or less, if you had to guess?
I want to say it was like 04.
Yeah, perfect.
Is that right?
2004, 2005. Yeah. So we're talking, almost 20 years ago, right? 19 seasons ago.
Which is crazy because it feels like it was yesterday, but that's because we're old.
And that, by the way, great book, 7 Seconds or Less by Jack McCallum. Really fun read on a lot of stuff with the Suns and how he gets into a little bit how people are like, this isn't going to work. But I'm going to go back to the real GM message board days. We used to argue all the time. Like people would say the Suns are a good defensive team. And people were like, no, they're not. They allow, 110 points per game and, whatever it was. And then that was like my first introduction to like, offensive and defensive rating and pace adjusted stats and all those kind of things. That was really where I started to really start to learn and understand those kind of things, because those Suns teams were always at worst middle of the pack and sometimes really good defensive teams. This one also hits home for me a little bit because when I originally moved to Florida, I would go watch Amari Stoudemire when I lived on the other side of Orlando play in high school at Cypress Creek High School. We would go over there and watch him play games as a high schooler when I was like, this kid's going to go straight to the NBA. So just, kind of hitting home of like, holy crap, like guys I watched play in high school are retiring. Like I am far too old.
You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's not good. That can't be a good sign, but
right.
but yeah, both these players, I mean, you look at Sean Marion in terms of his ability to step out and shoot the three. As funny as his shot looked, his ability to step out and shoot the three and still be a factor on the boards and be quick and be versatile and all of that. And then, of course, Stoudemire, that pick and roll with Steve Nash was just absolutely devastating. So again, great decision here. We knew it was coming, but great decision here by the Suns to retire these numbers and put them in their Ring of Honor.
Sean Marion and Kevin Martin. You remember Kevin Martin played for the Kings and a few other teams. Those were the two guys who taught me I'm not going to worry so much about shooting form if it goes in. If their form's repeatable and it goes in, I don't really care what it looks like as long as they can get the shot off and it goes in. So that was two guys there that really was like, yeah, if it goes in, I don't really care what it looks like.
Kevin Martin, part of the haul that the Thunder got for James Harden.
Yes. Yeah,
way back in the day. Yep. Way back in the day. All right.
Steven Adams too.
That's right.
They're still going, right? Steven Adams and James Harden still going for the trade. You can imagine anybody else's, right? Jeremy Lamb, kind of, still kind of, sort of. Yeah, I'd have to look at who else was in that trade. But
all right, let's talk future cap space here.
Yeah.
Keith, you put out a tweet earlier today about your 2024 cap space projections. Now, what is it that you're looking at when you're putting together these numbers? For those of you that are podcast listeners, this is the way this breaks down. Keith has the Spurs at just over 55 million in cap space, leading the way. The Magic at 51 million and change. The Jazz at 41 million and change. The Hornets at 40.7 million. Pistons 38.7 million. 76ers at 32.9 million. Wizards at 20.1 million. So when you're putting this together, are you looking at, this player is likely to pick up his option, the team is likely to do this, and then you're settling on a final number? Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So the first is I use the NBA's official projection, which for next year is 142 million. So I'm using that number, not the 10%. That is the modest 4.4% official projection from the NBA. As that updates, I plug in the new number and we'll update all of these numbers. Then I do exactly what you said. I go through all the guaranteed salaries on the books, drop those in there. I don't project trades or anything like that because
Sure.
that's just too complicated with that. So, like, for example, Damian Lillard still a part of the Trailblazers in this first passage projections because he's still on the Trailblazers right now. But as I go through it, then yes, I make a projection on every option and every partial or non-guaranteed contract. Do they stay? Or are they going to go? I used there's a projection model out there that I believe ESPN provided for next year's standings. It's as good as anything, right? Because it's all kind of somewhat of a guess, but at least that's an educated guess. So I use that to determine the draft picks. I go through, all right, who owes what picks? What are the protections? Get all the draft picks loaded in there as well, and then come up with the numbers. And these are the 7 teams that I project to have cap space, as you mentioned. So little interesting, right? Because so the Spurs topping the list at 55 million, a max salary for 24-25 right now. If it's the 10 plus years, like, so the highest level max, the 35% is 49.7 million.
Ooh.
So that's barely, enough room to slide in a max guy there with this. So the Spurs and the Magic can both do that. The 30% max salary is 42.6 million. And then the lowest is 35.5 million. That's the 25% max salary. So again, as we get into these numbers, you start to get a sense of like when you're hearing all these things and like this team has max cap space or they can, create 2 max slots and those sorts of things. Maybe.
Not
Like
really.
the 76ers, for example, there's been a lot of stuff out there of, again, we talked a lot in yesterday's show when we talked about James Harden. They're trying to go for cap space, but at a minimum next year, they have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on the books. And that's if they were able to like clear out PJ Tucker's contract as well. But Maxey and Embiid together, that's already $64 million. As I said, the cap's only projected to be 142 million. So yeah, I mean, that's still a ton of cap space, but you're talking, what's that, 76 million or so, 78 million. So that's not even enough for 2 full maxes. Cause you'd need, 98, almost $9,900 million. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind as you hear these reports and go through. That's why we do this early pass. I'll have a full article up on Spot Track either later today or maybe tomorrow that lists all this out, plus where the other 23 teams are right now. Are they projected to be over the tax? Are they projected to be a mid-level team? Are they projected to be up and over the second apron and into the super tax? Where's that going to be? Where is everybody kind of sitting? So that'll all come out, sometime in the next couple of days, and it'll just give you a sense of right now, essentially about a year out, where are we sitting? And then we tweak and adjust as everything goes forward and moves forward with extensions and option decisions and trades and all the things that will happen over the next several months.
So when you're looking at this list, which of these teams do you think is the most dangerous in terms of being a landing spot for? And we talked about it yesterday. There's not a ton of free agents out there. It's not like this just crazy free agent class where there's all these guys to choose from. But should somebody decide to make a leap, who do you think is the most dangerous on this list to go and get somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I would think the top 3 teams, the Spurs, the Magic, and the Jazz, and not just because I know that's easy because they have the most money to spend, but also I think the Spurs, if Wembanyama is what we think he might be, and a couple of their other guys take a step forward, you could see them be a team where, much like the Rockets this year, hey, that one or two veteran free agents that are like, yeah, I can lift them. Like, I'll go there. I'll be the guy who helps get them forward and into the playoff picture. So that the Magic, they're in somewhat similar boat. I think, maybe a year, a half year ahead of where the Spurs are just in the building process and building up. And then the Jazz are already a pretty good team. And this is not that with the Jazz, this doesn't project them losing a single member of their core kind of really good group, because they've done some smart things with renegotiating and extending Jordan Clarkson. They used a bunch of their cap space this year to go get John Collins. My guess is a large chunk of that 41.6 million would go to a renegotiation and extension for Lauri Markkanen.
That makes sense.
To try to keep him in the fold long term, not even expose him to free agency and go that way. But if they were like, hey, kind of a wink and a nod, we'll take care of you a year from now. We could kind of go down that path. So we'll see, where that all goes. But those three teams jump out at me. Philly, obviously, because you have Embiid and Maxey already in place, but 33 million, I mean, you're talking, that's like two signings and you're out of space already. So, Daryl Morey's got some work to do. But if he could shed PJ Tucker, if they dropped Paul Reed, now you're talking, you're up around 50 plus million. And that's a different spending tier, right? Now you're in a different world.
Yeah, which they certainly can do that. And that Daryl Morey is capable of doing the cap gymnastics required in order to open up that space. So they'll certainly be a team to keep an eye on. But it is interesting to see, projecting forward, who's going to have cap space next summer. And again, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, that cap space, it's not always used to sign players, but it also seems like it's becoming less valuable in today's NBA, with less stars signing teams directly into cap space. Instead, we're seeing trade situations. Now, again, cap space can be very useful in trade situations as well, but it's just something to keep in mind. This doesn't mean that these teams are going to go load up on the next stars. They may have the opportunity to do so. It's just becoming less frequent in today's NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're in a completely different world than the one you and I kind of grew up on, where it was every few years teams loaded up to make runs at free agents. Now it's we're probably going to extend our own guys. We're going to move forward that way, and then we kind of go in that direction.
Yep. All right, Keith, let's get into our summer breakdown here. Let's start with the Detroit Pistons. Today we have the Pistons and the Memphis Grizzlies to talk about. So let's transition over into that mode, and we'll start with Detroit. I think the biggest thing right off the bat, Cade Cunningham being healthy is so important for Detroit.
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of ways, that's kind of their biggest addition to the roster from last year. Played in very few games last season for the Pistons. So what was it, 10? Maybe it's like in that range. If not, I'm going to look that up.
How many games he actually played?
Yeah, I think it was only 10. Or maybe it was more. 12.
It wasn't a lot.
Close. Yeah, 12 games. They were pretty good games. 19.9 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, 6 assists, nearly a steal. Half a block. Not bad for a guy who mostly plays out on the perimeter. Shot was, let's leave that alone. We'll hope for improvement there.
Sure.
But lost year for him, right? When you really needed that year of development. So getting him back in the fold, huge for this team. He, as much as there's other guys on this roster I like Jaden Ivey, I like Bojan Bogdanovic, I like
Jalen Duren.
Yeah. Like those are good players, but Cade Cunningham could be a star. And we're hearing great stuff out of Team USA and all the things that are going on with him there. So I think that's the biggest addition, if you will, as I put that in quotes.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I agree. That's going to be big for the Detroit Pistons. Is this finally the year? I say finally, it's not like he's been with them forever, but so many rumors. Do they move Bogdanovic this year, or is this just, hey, let's keep him on and let's see if we can squeak into that 9 or 10 seed or something like that?
Yeah, I think the Pistons' hope is by the time we hit the trade deadline, we're still in the mix, right? We're still in the mix to make the play-in tournament, and if that's the case, Bogdanovic sticks, probably Burks sticks, Joe Harris and Monte Morris, who they added this offseason, those guys probably both stick as well. And then it's, yeah, we're moving forward with this group. That they didn't trade Bogdanovich and Burks at the trade deadline. We knew then they were probably keeping both of them this summer because they could have got a pretty nice return for those guys last year from contending teams. And the whole idea was we want to be good next year. We think, growth from our kids, getting Cade Cunningham back, we have the makings of a team that can be decent. Now, this is the range where we talk about it's not every measure of good is we made the playoffs, we're contending for the title. It could be for the Pistons to have a good season, for me would be in the mix in February around the trade deadline, still be in the mix to make the postseason. You've had a good year. Then, we'll see where it goes over the last month and a half, 2 months of the season. But I think, if that's where you are, you're in a pretty good place. So, and I think their additions this summer, Joe Harris helps.
Just could be underrated, that one.
Have another guy in there. I think that's good. And then Monte Morris, I think, is good. If, let's say you get to a point where it's like, Cade Cunningham being our primary on-ball guy as, kind of our point guard, not necessarily going the way we want. We'd like to see another guy. Well, Monte Morris is great in that role, right? You just plug him in and you just go forward. If nothing else, those are two really good, solid veterans coming off your bench that have both come off the bench for a lot in their career that can help kind of prop up these lineups. I think if you're Detroit, your big thing you're looking for is when we go to the bench, we don't want it to fall apart, right? We don't want to turn 5-point leads into 10-point deficits or 5-point deficits into 20-point deficits. We want to be able to turn that over and stay in, as we turn over to our bench, stay in these games, be close and go from there.
Well, and then we need to talk about Oscar Thompson, of course, their draft pick, and Marcus Sasser as well. But they've added some talent there too, potentially some high upside talent. So that's something to keep an eye on in terms of the future of this Pistons team. Well, I think they've added some pieces, certainly, Joe Harris, Monte Morris, who can help them in the present. The future sure looks bright here in Detroit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Asar Thompson, I'm really excited to see what that looks like with him. Does he crack the rotation right away? What does that look like? Monty Williams, obviously a huge addition to this team as the head coach, got that, super long, super rich coaching contract. So, the Pistons really, he was their guy and they paid to get him. So I think as we, look at that kind of addition to this, group, the nice thing for Monty Williams is he's not coming in with any of these kids and saying, all right, you all get all the minutes because there's nobody else, right? It's going to be, if you get minutes on this team right out of the gate, it's either because there was an injury or you earned it, right? And we hope it's the second one, right? And that's where for Asar Thompson, I just got to kind of wonder, like, where's it going to come? Because he's really a 2-3 right now. And if you look at their 2-3 line, you're talking Jaden Ivey, Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovich, Joe Harris. Then you've got kind of the carryover guys like Isaiah Livers is still there. If Cunningham has to move off ball at all, he's got to kind of play there. And even if I know some have said, well, maybe Thompson could be a big point guard. And maybe he could be, but even there, now you're talking Cunningham's probably going to start the year. Then you got Monte Morris. He's going to be competing with Marcus Sasser, who's a little older, ready to go. I think eventually Thompson's athletic ability will be too much to keep off the floor. They're going to have to find a way to get him in there, and some kind of injury will pop up and he'll get his minutes that way. But I don't know that it's a super clean and easy path to playing time for him right out of the gate. And that's maybe not the worst thing, right? He's probably going to need some adjustment and development time coming out of overtime elite, making the jump to the NBA.
And then last thing we need to get into here, I mean, I think the most questionable decision by Detroit over the summer was the 4-year, $60 million extension for Isaiah Stewart. I'm not saying it's bad, but given the depth of their big rotation, given the fact that, I mean, you've got guys like James Wiseman, you've got other guys that can man these positions, Marvin Bagley, right? What do you think about that decision to extend Stewart for that long? And then how do things shake out at the big position?
Yeah, I like to say this is the 4-way steel cage match, right? You throw them all in there and let them battle it out. And, last two guys standing probably play a lot. The problem is Bagley can play the 4, right? And I think we'll probably start at the 4 for this team, unless they really like, we got to get more shooting on the floor or whatever. And then he'll start next to he started next to Wiseman at the end of the year. But if Duran overtakes Wiseman, 2 of those guys will start. And then Isaiah Stewart, I think, is in kind of his best role, which is come off the bench, play with a ton of energy, just kind of, bang bodies, fly up and down the floor, make things happen. I think of him as a potentially better version of Montrezl Harrell. And Montrezl Harrell was really good in that kind of role for a while. What's interesting with Stewart, though, is took over 4 3-pointers per game last season. He didn't shoot it at a great percentage, but that's okay, right? That's part of what last season was about. If he starts knocking those down, now you have a completely different look at a different kind of player, right? Now you're saying, all right, hey, he can be a 4-5 instead of just a kind of smaller 5.
Right.
I'm in the mix. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun, if nothing else, as a kind of outsider, as a non-Pistons fan, because I don't necessarily, and I mean this with all the love in the world of the Pistons and their fans, I don't really care who emerges out of that group. I just care that it's, a battle and somebody does emerge. So for me, like, I'm going to have fun watching and tuning in and watching these guys go to work every night and just kind of figure it out on the fly and figure out what they are.
The main most head-to-head battle, it's Wiseman against Duran. And that's going to be really fast, especially when we've heard, rave reviews about Jalen Duran out of Team USA, out of the select team playing against Team USA. Duran was one of the guys that got named as having played really, really well and really combined well with Cade Cunningham. So what does that mean heading into Pistons training camp? That's going to be, I don't want to say one of the most important camp battles around the NBA, but it's going to be one that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on.
And I'll just speak to the James Wiseman part of it all. Last year, this is just with the Pistons. I'm taking the Warriors part out because we all know that was a mess, and he was the only kind of part of things there. 24 games, 22 starts with the Pistons, 25 minutes per game. So that's good. He stayed on the floor, right? He wasn't just going out there committing 3 fouls in the first quarter and getting bounced. 12.7 points per game, 8.1 rebounds per game. I get it, right? They were a terrible team. They weren't playing meaningful basketball over those 24 games he played. But that's better than what we had seen out of James Wiseman quite a bit over the last couple of years. So I'm not out on James Wiseman. Sometimes big men take a while to figure it out. I'm still in. The talent is there with James Wiseman. I think, for Detroit, someone is going to emerge as a good starting center out of that group of 3, out of Wiseman, Stewart, and Duran. And that's a great place to be in, right? Yeah. You're in a spot where, hey, we got these guys under team control. We can figure it out. We can sort it out. Overall, this year for the Pistons, I know they started last year and it's starting again. Pistons are my sleeper in the East. They might, make a run and be, a team that could grab the 8th seed. Yeah, maybe. I don't think so. Let's play meaningful basketball into February. And then let's see where it goes from there with this Detroit team. Much kind of like Orlando a year ago, right? You were kind of in it until the end. Indiana, you were kind of in it, but not fully in it with, a few weeks to go. If that's where Detroit is, that's a successful season and you built on what you had.
Yeah, they'll be, look, if you can get Cade Cunningham healthy and if you can get, the kind of battles in the middle that we're talking about here, you can get, Joe Harris to come in and knock in some threes for you. Bogdanovich continue to do Bogdanovich things and all of these things happen. Then at the very least, it's going to be a lot more fun this season for the Pistons than it was last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just not have a lost season, right? Because that's you can't have that again, right? Because that's kind of the disaster season, right? One of these key young guys gets hurt and go. I also, too, I know some people they're a little down on Jaden Ivey. I think he's pretty good, man. He's tough. He knows how to play, knows how to get himself to the foul line. I think he knows how to play on and off the ball. I'm in on most of Detroit's young players. I think this team's going to end up being pretty good.
All right, let's head down south. Let's take a trip to Tennessee and talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. They have a lot going on. I don't even know where to start here. We've got, obviously they made a big trade this summer. Yeah. They also have to deal with their star is going to be out for a little bit here to start the season. So, where do you want to start with Memphis, Keith? There's so many different ways
Sure.
that we can go. I guess let's start with Ja. So Ja's going to be out to start the season. Did they make the moves necessary, especially with losing Ja and Tyus Jones? Because it used to be just Ja's out. Okay, Tyus, here you go, and we can stabilize ourselves that way. Ja's going to be out, and Tyus Jones is gone now too. Did they make the moves necessary to tread water until Ja Morant gets back?
All right, so I'm going to take it a step further because I'm going to add Dylan Brooks into that same kind of conversation, right? So you're down 2 starters to open the year and your 6th man in Tyus Jones. So now you basically replace those 2 guys because I don't think Josh Christopher and Isaiah Todd, they're probably not going to make the roster. They're there right now, but those guys were added as part of trades that were designed to do other things for the Grizzlies. So it's really you replace Dylan Brooks and Tyus Jones with Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose. What I think happens with Marcus Smart is, my guess is he opens the year as the team's starting point guard, and then they'll piece it together at the 3. Right? Maybe they go small and start a guy like Luke Kennard because they do go big in the front court with Adams and Jackson. So you could probably afford to go slightly smaller if you want with Luke Kennard for shooting. Maybe Zaire Williams 2 years ago looked like he might be the future starting small forward. Last year, completely wasted season for him because of injuries. Maybe go with him. Maybe David Roddy steps forward. Jake LaRavia. We'll see how they get there. But I think Smart starts the year as the 1, right? He's your primary lead ball handler. Then Derrick Rose slides into the Jones role as the backup. 20, 25 games, whatever it is for Ja Morant. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's 25.
Yeah, I think you're right. When he gets back, then what happens, and then obviously I'm presuming health and everything, Smart slides into the Dylan Brooks role, which might sound a little weird because he is like 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah.
Well, Marcus Smart his entire career has been able to defend 2s, 3s, 4s, even some of the smaller 5s in the league. He's fine in that role. Ja slides in, obviously, as the starting point guard. And then Derrick Rose, if he's still going and going strong, holds the backup role, or Smart kind of starts at the 3 and then slides over as the backup 2. And that's just kind of how you play it out. That's my guess. And because of that, yeah, I think they did enough. I think, I think that's fine. I mean, you have now the last 2 defensive players of the year on your team, and Jackson and Smart. You're starting from a better place than a lot of other teams are, considering you're replacing, at least to open the season for the first third of the year, three major rotation guys, 2 starters and your 6th man.
Yeah, and something we forget about, and shouldn't, is Steven Adams be coming back. I mean, he was missing for a good chunk of the season last year, including the playoffs for the Memphis Grizzlies, and you've got him back in the mix too. So I mean, and he is, I mean, we know Herculean strength from Steven. he can end fights by simply picking players up,
walking
away with them, carrying them off like a piece of luggage. Steven Adams out there with Marcus Smart, with Jaren Jackson Jr., that's potentially terrifying defensively. That grouping, that could be very, very good. My sense at the time was that it was maybe a little bit much to give up the both firsts in order to get Smart. But if this works, if the Grizzlies if this all gets melded into a grit and grind identity that seems to just permeate the Grizzlies franchise, if all of this comes into fruition there, it could work out very, very well. The kind of defensive, gritty identity that you're trying to create could really work out here with Marcus Smart, with Steven Adams, with Jaren Jackson Jr., with all the pieces that they've got here. Could be great. Brandon Clark, is there any? I mean, I haven't looked at the latest updates, but he could be a real difference maker too if they could get him back at some point this season. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking super late in the year if he's back at all.
Yeah.
And that would be my guess. I mean, he tore the Achilles so late in the year that he's probably not, going to return and play this season for the Grizzlies. But I think they're okay because Santi Aldama really stepped forward a year ago, improved like, hey, and it's funny. That's one where, right, we don't overrate Summer League. But remember, he was dominant in Summer League, like could not be stopped. And then that translated right into the regular season, and he really played well. Just for those who maybe missed it, 9 points per game, 5 rebounds, but that's only in 22 minutes a game, most of them coming off the bench. Shoot 47% from the field. And someone might be like, for a big guy, but he took 3.5 threes and knocked him down at 35% per field goal percent there. So that's a pretty good rate hitting from deep for Santi Aldama. So I think him sliding in there. You've got David Roddy in there is another guy. I know they're super high on Xavier Tillman.
Yeah.
Did some stuff. I mean, I'm not going to say he I'm not. I don't think AD's having Xavier Tillman nightmares, but he at least made him work. Right,
Sure.
He at least made him work for the things that he had to get there. So they like him. They really they're very high on Kenneth Lofton Jr., who's, for my money, he's got to shoot it better because he can't be a 5. He's just too small and not athletic enough at his size to be a 5. But I think he's going to be, if he shot it better and could play the 4 and move his feet a little better, then all of a sudden you might really have some. So I think they've got enough front court depth to overcome Clark. The big thing that they've got kind of going for him too is, even with Ja Morant being out, their continuity is really good. They're returning 15 players from last year. That's inclusive of their two-way guys, which, if you're watching this, you can see Jacob Gilliard and Vince Williams Jr. They're on 2-year two-way deals. But they're returning basically their entire roster except for Brooks and Jones. Now it's tough because you're losing a couple of key contributors there. But that continuity is big too, right? Taylor Jenkins doesn't have to do stuff. And the guys they added that are coming in, Smart and Rose, those guys have been in the league forever. So they should be able to just slide in and do whatever it is they're asked to do and just move forward. So I think this Grizzlies team's going to be really, really good again. Their big thing is just be good while Ja Morant is out.
Just be in the mix.
Games over 500, keep your head above water, and then you can maybe really take off, when it goes from there. I think this year, let's get Steven Adams minutes down. Even more. I know, what was he at a season ago? He was only at 27 minutes, but let's get that down 24, 25, really probably kind of split it. But I think the confidence that they have that Tillman can do it, you might see weird lineups with this team too. You could slide Jackson over and play, 4 guard lineups around those and play super fast and really open the floor up for Ja Morant and do different stuff. So I think they've got some different lineup options and versatility that they haven't had in years past.
I've got 2 things to close things out on Memphis. Number one, does Marcus Smart actually dye his hair blue, as we saw in I think it was the ESPN graphic when the trade was first announced? Because I think we need to make that happen. He had green hair when he was with the Celtics. He needs to have his hair blue.
So I don't think he's going to. The green hair was a thing for his mom. Who passed away, unfortunately, due to cancer a few years back, and his mom liked that he had the green hair. So I think he said, we'll see, but he explained, like, I do the green hair for my mom, so he may stick with the green, but we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if he breaks it out. He's also been known at times. A couple years ago, he had it braided into a shamrock on opening night, and then dyed the shamrock green. So he's done a lot of different fun stuff. So we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. All right. I didn't realize the mom angle to that. So maybe that does change it. But that was pretty cool. The ESPN graphic that changed, not only swapped the jersey, but swapped the hair color as well. And then the next thing, Jake LaRavia. This is a guy who impressed me in Summer League this year. And Summer League is not the end all be all, but just not expect him to be like a big rotation guy this year or anything, but just somebody to keep an eye. Like, he popped a bit in Summer League, especially against my Lakers. He was fantastic. A guy to keep an eye on for sure with this Grizzlies roster.
Yeah, if they can get one out of Zaire Williams, Jake LaRavia, and David Roddy to pop and be a full-time rotation guy, that's huge. And that's when you got 3 guys kind of eyeing for that spot, that's big. That's why I think they were very confident in letting Dylan Brooks go, beyond the whole we're kind of tired of his nonsense and all the stuff with that. I think that's why the Grizzlies were like, hey, we have guys who, quite frankly, if Dylan Brooks was back, he's going to play 30 minutes a night. You need the minutes to go to some of these other guys to really find out. And I'm going to bet on Zaire Williams personally. He was really figuring it out as a rookie 2 seasons ago. Towards the end of the year, is that they were really making that run into the playoffs. There's just something there. If he's healthy, I'm going to bet on him. I like the talent. I like the skill set. I think he's going to have a shot to be pretty good. The thing I'll close with is they're still $13.4 million under the tax.
Ooh.
So plenty of room if they need to make a trade. This is a team that they openly owned. We're close to probably having to make some consolidation moves here.
Yeah.
We'll see if that's something that they do in season. They own all of their own draft picks moving forward, I believe still. So that's something that's really kind of important for them as well. So they're in a spot where they don't have that Warriors pick anymore, but they're in a place where they can really do some stuff. Going down the line into the next couple of years. So I think that's good. They've got some swap stuff going on with Phoenix from that kind of goofy trade that they made where it was here's 1 million seconds for this. But the reason they could even do those kind of things was look at how full the roster is. And all these guys are in a contract. Last thing I'll say too is this is kind of the last year to go do some big consolidation trade and add salary to the roster. They're going to be right around the super tax line a year from now because you've got all the extensions start kicking in for all these guys. Desmond Baines will kick in. John Morant is in there now. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in there. So you're starting to become a pretty expensive team. So you've kind of got one more year to spend. So I'm very curious to see how this comes together for this Grizzlies team. Not only on the floor, but what does it look like as we get into February before they get to be super expensive next July?
And they did pop up in trade rumors this past year. I want to say they were connected to OG Anunoby off the top of my head as potentially a landing spot there. So you could see where they could put together a few of these contracts and maybe go get somebody if depending on how the market develops between now and the February trade deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you can throw together, 2, 3, 4 contracts that can get you up to, 20, 30 million, and you're not even necessarily touching your core group.
Yeah.
That's what a great place to be in, right? They are in a spot where there's a lot of different things this team can do. So I'm very, very high on this Memphis team. I think they'll be one of the best teams in the West again in the regular season. Their thing now is, all right, you were a cute story the last couple years, but we're done with that. We move on very quickly. You go from being cute to, are you ever going to win? Right. And now it's like, all right, it's time, right? They need to make a real push to, at a minimum, the conference finals. If not, make a real fight for the NBA finals, because otherwise the conversation we'll be having going into next offseason is, all right, is it time to maybe go in a different direction with a couple of these guys? That's just how quick it moves in the NBA. I know it sounds like this team just came into being a couple years ago in this group, but that's just how it works.
Yeah, the Grizzlies could very quickly flip from bearish territory to bullish, depending on how this season plays out. And on that, it's not going to get any better than that. So, we might as well.
The show's getting a little Grizzly, so we should probably.
Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for listening and watching the NBA Front Office Show here. Make sure you are following us over on YouTube. Turn on those notifications, hit that like button for us as well. And then over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you follow the show there. You can take us with us, wherever you go. You need to mow the lawn, you need to go to the gym, you're taking a trip, whatever. Download the podcast version of the show as well, and you can take us with you.
Hey, I forgot. We got to do the next 2 teams.
Oh, yes.
Let's finish with that. Let's go.
Spin the wheel.
Let's see.
Spin the wheel, Pat.
We are doing the Toronto Raptors and the Dallas Mavericks.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
Here
it is.
Good ones.
So now you know what you have looking forward to.
Now that we spent, Raptors fans were not super happy with this after last show.
No, well, you know what's funny though? There was somebody who I appreciated that. Hey, we're confused too. Like, I don't understand why my team's supposed to be here. So there's some who get it, right? For sure.
Right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Till next time. See ya and stay safe.